Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Speech Check. I am Sam.
And I'm Matt.
And this is episode 20.
And today, we're going to talk about Rocket Arena, the Splinter Cell animated series, and stick around until the end to hear your comments from the question from last episode. But, before we start talking about that, Sam has an announcement.
I do indeed. We're going to be launching our Instagram page, hopefully by the time you hear this. So we'll link all that in the description for you to check out if you were that way inclined. You can also look us up on Facebook if you want to interact with us. Probably use that as a more interactive way to get in touch with us, or by commenting on the videos that we do. You can send us questions over there, or requests of things we should talk about, whether that's the next hentai game that Matt should look up in the Indie Spotlight, or a story for me to cover in the news. So yeah, links to everything will be in the description, and go over and check us out. But Matt, now that we're done with that, what have you been playing?
Well, I want to start with a little bit of a disclaimer, because I made a mistake in the last episode where I was speaking about Darkwood and Pathologic. I mentioned that they're Russian developers, and they're not, they're Polish. And Darkwood is set in the Polish wilderness. So, apologies. It was Poland, not Russia. Besides that, I decided to give Assassin's Creed Origins a fair crack of the whip, because I was only 2-3 hours into it, and I'd already kind of given up on it a little bit. I went back into it, put another 6-7 hours in, and found that I was exactly right. It is as I thought it would be. Not to say it's not fun. It is fun, but it is precisely the experience that I expected. There was a section that gave me some hope, where I thought that they were going to lean a little bit on almost like a Hitman type vibe, with like an area internally that you couldn't go into, but your target was in there, so you'd have to like use a costume or something, because there's a section where you go into a bathhouse and you like put on a bathrobe. It's put on you in a cutscene, so, not a bathrobe, sorry, towel. They put like towels on you, and you have to find a way in and kill this dude. I was like, "Ooh, this is kind of interesting. Maybe I need to like go over here and make a noise," because the guards would not immediately be hostile to you if they saw you. They kind of tell you to go away, but they wouldn't start attacking you. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I was completely wrong. There was just a ladder in another room that went up into like some overhead ventilation thing, so it wasn't that at all, sadly. It is what I said in the last episode, that you just have your loop, you play that loop, and you do it over and over again. And it's really well crafted, but kind of repetitive. I also fell out of love a bit with Cultist Simulator, which I was talking very highly of last time. It's a very interesting game, cool mechanics. I really did like it. But I got to the end game, and all of the mystery, exploration, learning, knowledge stuff just kind of evaporated, and it turned into a pretty relentless grind. You essentially have to make sure that you get this one, let's call it a resource for a ritual, so that you can ascend. And without that, the game cannot progress. The end game is just grinding out this one very specific thing until you can move on. And I spent a long time experimenting, and I was at the point where I had like 130 gold, which is insane. In that game, if you have 30 gold, you're like set. Like that's a lot of money. So 130, I could basically just sit and wait and not interact with the game at all. And there was no way that I was going to run out of anything anytime soon. There was certain events that would come up, but broadly speaking, I'd gotten into the habit of waiting out certain negative events and knowing how to combat other negative events so that they would never impact me. And there was just no challenge. There was no fun left in the experience of grinding out this one thing so that I can finish the game. So even though I was only one step away, really, from finishing the game, I decided to let myself kind of die, I suppose. Well, in fact, I gathered notoriety until I got arrested. But I just wanted to finish the game so that I could start again and do the enjoyable section again. Yeah, that raised a couple of eyebrows when I was talking to some friends on Discord, and I said, I'm just trying to finish my game because I really don't want to have to do the end game stuff. And they were like, but you're so close. Like, why would you not want to do that? And I said, because it's not fun. There's no fun in me sat here watching all this time down and trying to get this one particular resource. It's just not fun. So I didn't do it. And I've kind of put Cultist Simulator down now. I got a good 40 hours out of it, so definitely got my money's worth. And it is still worth a pick-up. I'd definitely say pick it up. But I'm just a bit saddened by how they constructed the ending. What have you been playing, Sam?
I have been playing more of Red Dead. Again, I'm not going to focus too much on because that's been what the last 3 episodes I think I've been saying I've been doing that. I've been inching the story forward a bit more. I played a few more missions, but the main thing I've been focusing on is getting the gold medals on the missions, the rare big boy achievement. And I think it's the hardest version of it. So they had it on GTA 5, but you had like it included like the stranger missions, so like the random, which were generally easier because they were more about just meeting these weird, interesting people and having a bit of a laugh. So the criteria for beating them was fairly easy. Whereas on Red Dead, like some of the times to beat the missions are pretty tough. And ironically, the time spent in cutscenes, like that's the timer for the mission still going. So for the first time you do a mission, if that mission has a time restriction on it, you're probably not going to get it because you're going to be, you're going to want to watch the story, right? You're not going to want to skip all the exposition, especially a game like that is very heavy on the exposition. So yeah, I'm at 40 out of 70, I think, or 39 out of 70. So I'm doing pretty well considering I haven't completely finished the story. That's pretty good going. I also sampled the online because it had a big update, but I'm not going to dwell too much on that because I'm going to cover that in my news and I have some things to say about it. Ooh. So I'm going to move swiftly on and say that I actually played my PS4 for a bit and I played A Way Out, if you're aware of what that is.
The co-op prison escape game?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. I played with my friend Tom. He did his sharing thing that the PS4 does. You only need one person to have the game if you're playing it with somebody, or you can share the library. I think Steam has a similar thing, right? You can game share.
Yes, it does, yeah. I'm not sure 100% on how it works, but there is that kind of functionality.
I think it's like if you're playing a single-player game, if you own the game and you own it to me, and then you want to play it, I think you'd kick me out, I think.
I think that's how it works, yeah.
Yeah. We played it for about an hour or so, but it just kind of felt a bit flat to me. I'd heard like a lot of good things about it. Like it's this unique co-op experience where you have to like puzzle and do the narrative and you have to work together. But it was very stop-start. It's heavy on the exposition like Red Dead is, but all this talking, then it gives you the control, walk around for a bit. Okay, then you get to another little cutscene, go up to this thing, open a door, another little mini cutscene, and it was just like, I didn't feel like it was trying to let us get going. I kind of wanted to get into the meat of the game, and it kind of feels like it's channeling that Telltale Games vibe of like trying to be an interactive experience rather than a game. But it's also got the feel of like a Lego game about it, which I dub as leapfrog puzzling, where it's like I need to open a door for you, and then you come in, and then you have to distract somebody, and then I can go through, and it's kind of like that, where you do a thing, I do a thing, you do a thing, but without any of like the fun or charm that a Lego game has. So yeah, I was a little bit disappointed by it, and the dialogue as well. I think it's a Swedish game, as in it was made by a Swedish development team, but it feels like the dialogue has been translated into English. The vocal performances are just a little bit off. Like, you can just tell, you just get that vibe that, or like maybe it's the editing, where like sometimes my character would say something and then there'd be like an instant response the second I finish speaking. Or like sometimes the inflections on words just weren't quite right. That was just noticeable. But yeah, I was a little bit disappointed because it was hyped as being this like unique game that was really good, but it seems like the fact that it is a unique co-op only experience, it's sold on that and it doesn't do anything beyond that. So if you're not into doing that, then you won't really get a lot out of it. My personal opinion.
A bit disappointing.
Yeah, a little bit after hearing some decent things about it. But yeah, that's what I have been playing. So that's what we've been playing, and Matt now is going to tell us about the releases.
I am indeed. Our first release is Rocket Arena, coming at us from Final Strike Games, the 14th of July, 2020. Final Strike have worked on a number of titles. They're quite a big, well-established team, but this is their first full title, and it has been published by EA, which I want you to keep in your minds for something I'm going to talk about in a second. Rocket Arena is a 3v3 Quake-like arena shooter with Smash Brothers elements and elements of other hero shooters too. At release, there are 10 characters, 10 game modes, and 10 maps, so there's a fair variety of content in there. Now, with EA at the front of our minds, this game has already faced a troubled release. So I played this when it went into alpha testing about 8 months ago, I'd say, 8 months to a year ago. And it was pretty good. I was active on the forums, reporting bugs and stuff. It was fun. It is a fun game. But it was initially released, or slated for release, as a full price game, $29.99, with the deluxe edition being $39.99, and it has an in-game battle pass and skins, and that was known from testing, the beta testing and the pre-release reviews. So
They were like transparent about that.
Yeah, you were getting a full game with additional content, additional paid content, which rubbed some people up the wrong way. So it didn't get too much attention. Now it's heavily discounted, like below $10 discounted. It's gone way, way down. And they're running a free weekend right now. And they've done a couple of other free events, or they're planning more free events. So there's a thought that the desired model for this game is a Fortnite Apex style free-to-play with the battle pass and the skins to earn money. But somewhere along the way, there was some greed involved who would have thunk it with EA, and they decided to go for the full price release and the paid content.
No, Matt, that doesn't sound like EA. I think you may have got your wires crossed or your sources wrong.
I know. I mean, everything I hear about EA is just how generous and giving they are. You know, that's all I've ever heard about them. So it was a shock to me. Another little bugbear in this situation is that the people who bought the game at $40 are now seeing it reduced to below 10 and then probably further to free. And it doesn't seem like they're going to get any more for that, if you see what I mean. Like, the value of the game has just been reduced drastically, but the people who paid all this money are like, well, hey, if I had held off for 2 weeks, you would have realized that was a terrible release strategy, and I could have got the game for a quarter of the price.
I was about to say, did they get any like financial restitution? At the very least, like, okay, you can have the battle pass for free, or some kind of gesture from EA to say sorry that you had to pay 30 plus, or maybe even 40 for a game that is now free.
Yeah, and right now it's only free for a little bit, but the suspected trajectory is that it will end up free. And I don't think EA have mentioned anything about it thus far. They're just treating it as though you bought the game and any digital content that you got for it was released to you. Like, you were shown a product, you bought the product, the transaction was complete. I think that's their stance on it. At least there's been no talk that I can hear of. So onto the actual game, now that I've just basically said the worst thing about it. So it's kind of different from other hero shooters of its ilk, because instead of lowering an opponent's health, you increase their blast meter, which is why I compare it to Smash Bros with the percentage. And the higher that blast meter is, the further the enemy will fly when you hit them, like be pushed off. And the objective is to push them out of the map. And that sounds quite interesting. I think there's a
different take, yeah.
Yeah, this is a bit of a mix-up to the formula, because then you can start to think about angles and stuff. You know, all that person's near the edge, so I could push them out, or that person's flying really high, so I can push them up, or, you know, something like that. There's kind of like a dome that covers the entire map, so if you go outside that dome, you're destroyed. But the meter does also act as a health bar. So if you fill it up all the way, the enemy will just get mega blasted, and they will just ricochet around until they fly off into the blast zone, for want of a better term. So I feel like that in some way defeats its object, that it is just acting as a health bar, but you can also push people off. I don't really know how I feel about having that in. It might make the game a little bit slow if you could only push people off. I don't know. Seems like an odd choice to me. The character design is pretty typical. So anyone who's familiar with MOBAs or other hero shooters, you're going to recognize a lot of stuff here. From the character design, the actual, you know, artistic design of the characters, all the way to the skill design, you know, it's going to be stuff that you recognize. And my experience of it, it's a fun game for about 2 hours, 3 hours. It's like an okay game. It's fun, it's different, it has a lot of variety with the different game modes and stuff. I was shocked to hear they were selling it at 40 quid, because that's insane to me. It is not a full price game by any stretch of the imagination. That further kind of adds salt into the wound of this pricing debacle. But that's my 2 cents on it. If you want to pick it up, I would say wait about a month, because it's probably going to be free.
It seems like an odd thing to sell at the moment, because, like, if you look at that, I don't see the reason to play it, especially not to buy it, because it's like, okay, you can do that, or you can play Apex for free, or Fortnite for free, like you said. But yeah, I don't know what market it's catering to, basically. I get what they're trying to do with put a unique spin on pushing people out on the map, but I don't know if that's enough. Especially not, well, it's not worth 40 quid.
No. I mean, it's like you said, it's cool having to push people around, and the fact that all of the projectiles are rockets. They are rocket projectiles, so there's no hit scan in the game. It's just a little bit different. Like, that's kind of cool, but not full price cool. So the next game I'm going to talk about is Carrion. This is from Phobia Games, coming out the 23rd of July 2020. Published by Devolver Digital, who, in my opinion, have a history of supporting good games, supporting and making good games. It's a unique, I've called it a 2D platformer. A unique 2D platformer because you don't really platform per se. You play like a blobby thing, alien, and the objective is to maneuver your way around a space station using your fleshy appendages to make your way to the humans and kill them, eat them, and then spread your biomass. And throughout the game you get larger and gain more abilities, like the ability to put up a flesh shield or throw out spikes, all your kind of vicious alien stuff that you'd expect. And it looks really interesting. It's only, I think, £16 on Steam right now, and just like a smaller title that I think could really like scratch an itch if you're looking for a different sort of 2D experience. You know, playing a villain can be fun in games, and playing a formless mass of teeth and tentacles seems like an interesting one. It caught my eye for sure.
What would you say to people who want to play this game? Like, what games would you have liked before? Or what game is it comparative to? That if you like that, you'll like this?
That's a really hard question because I don't really know. The gameplay is quite unique. Like, if you're playing it on mouse and keyboard, you move your cursor around the screen, and where you right click is where your tentacles will go to move your main body mass in that direction, and if you left click you'll send out like an attacking tentacle in that direction, and then you can switch abilities with the other keys and stuff. I don't really know how to describe it. It's kind of a very unique game, a different sort of experience. I've not really seen anything too much like it. Maybe like,
so that's a reason in itself maybe to check it out.
Yeah, for sure. I think its uniqueness that kind of drew my attention to it and made me want to talk about it a little bit, even though I don't have a great deal to say about it. Interesting game, interesting mechanics, different spin on stuff, good 2D artwork, and the way the alien moves around the ship has been really carefully considered. So when your mass is moving around, you kind of have these tentacles shooting out to all of the different surfaces that you're using to swing your weight on, and it just looks quite visceral, like real and visceral. It's an interesting one. I'm going to hop straight on to my last game, which is Hellpoint from Cradle Games, coming out the 30th of July 2020. This is the first major title from Cradle Games, and it's a Souls-like horror game, horror-esque game, let's say. And when I first saw this, I was like, oh man, this looks cool. Like, I really like The Surge, and I really enjoyed that game. So I was kind of interested in the aesthetic because it has that sort of sci-fi punk-esque thing going on where you're on a space station with some loose H.R. Geiger-y elements, and you're orbiting a black hole which is causing anomalies, and by anomalies I mean enemies and aliens and things to pop in, and it's all a bit surreal, all a bit strange. It's kind of like Event Horizon meets Dark Souls, which is how I saw it and was like, ooh, interesting. But it is just too derivative to have any identity of its own. The combat is not just Souls-like, but it basically is Dark Souls. It has some minor changes which aren't significant enough to really separate it from its source material. And if I said more about the game, I would just be describing Dark Souls. It's that similar. From the way they structure their story to the way they structure their environments, looking for loops around so you can get back to areas from earlier, and the presence of bonfires. They do something different with the enemy respawn, where it isn't based on resting at a bonfire, it's just based on time. So enemies will respawn over time, something a little bit different. My final word on this is, if you're thinking of picking it up, just pick up Dark Souls 2. It's the same experience, but with better polish. You know, there's a lot of bugs in this game as well. That's something that's been reported pretty heavily. Still very buggy. It's early from release, but still very buggy. And that is all my releases for this episode.
Thank you, Matt. I am enlightened as always.
I guarantee. Who has time for all that paperwork?
So that's all I've got for you this episode. Sam, take us out into the world of gaming and show us what is on the horizon.
I shall do that right now. The first one I've got for you is that Netflix is adapting Splinter Cell into an animated series.
Ooh.
So this links back a little bit to our coverage of the Ubisoft Forward event that we did on the last episode. So a little bit of linkage going on there.
Mm-hmm.
It was a story that came out from Variety, and it reported that Netflix and Ubisoft, and it was later confirmed from a statement from Ubisoft, are partnering to create an animated adaptation, specifically an anime. So it's not just an animation, it is an anime of the Splinter Cell franchise.
Okay.
They've apparently signed for a 2-season deal. It's going to have 16 episodes overall, and the co-creator of John Wick, Mr. Derek Kolstad, is attached to the project. His role hasn't been specified, but he is a writer, so it's not an insane assumption to think that he would be a writer on that. This unfortunately doesn't come bundled with any news for any people that are interested in a Splinter Cell movie. I think the last time people heard about it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I think Tom Hardy's attached to that in some way. You would guess as Mr. Sam Fisher, but it's gone pretty quiet on that. And still nothing about a new Splinter Cell game, which I know people are kind of clawing for as well. Now, I know that you, Matt, are a big fan of the Castlevania anime series that's on Netflix.
I did like it, yeah.
I unfortunately couldn't get into it. I tried watching the first 2 episodes. I could not make head or tail of what was going on.
Fair enough.
But what's your reaction to this, Matt? And do you think that this is maybe the start of like a snowballing of adapting video game series as series, both live action and animated?
I have no great love for the Splinter Cell games. I enjoy.
It's not really your series, I know. Yeah.
No, what was the one for the GameCube? Blacklist, Black Site.
You had the original 3 were Splinter Cell, Pandora Tomorrow, and Chaos Theory.
Pandora Tomorrow was the one I had. I played Pandora Tomorrow. I enjoyed it. It was, it's a good game. Liked it, and I haven't played another one since then. So I don't have, I'm not gagging for more juicy Sam Fisher content. I don't. It seems like it'll be cool. They've got good people involved with it. Should be good. We'll see what comes of it. Some stuff doesn't translate to a cartoon format or even a series that well. So how they structure the story, I think, is going to be a massive part of this. But it'll be good. I'll definitely look out for it, and I'll definitely give it a watch. Yeah,
I personally am. I won't say I'm a big Splinter Cell fan, but I've played a decent amount of the games. I like them. I think Sam Fisher is an interesting character. A lot of people are like, if it's not Michael Ironside, it's not Sam Fisher. And he's got a very iconic voice, and he's a good actor. But he's he is an old man now. He can't be doing that. So I doubt we'll see him as Sam Fisher on screen. But I'm interested in it. I prefer a movie. I think it might suit, like, the sort of material maybe suits a movie better. I'll keep an eye out for it. It's got high things to live up to with The Witcher, though. And I know that's not specifically a video game, but a lot of people will know it from the video games. The next one is that Hideo Kojima is looking to work with the horror artist Junji Ito. Now, this is very current to anyone who listens to the last episode from Matt.
It is.
But we'll get to that a little bit at the end. So yeah, Junji Ito, the famed horror manga artist, announced at Comic-Con 2020 that the legendary Metal Gear Solid man himself, Hideo Kojima, got in touch with him about collaborating on a new project. He said in that interview, quotes, "I do know director Kojima, and we have been in conversation that he may have a horror-based game that he may be doing." Notice the use of "may" twice there, hedging his bets a little bit. "And so he has invited me to work on that, but there are no details yet." Going by a semi-related tweet from Kojima himself, he seems to be gagging to make a horror game again and to come back into the horror genre, saying that he wants to, quotes, "make the scariest horror game. I'll watch the scary movies in order to awaken my horror soul."
I like that.
And claims that it's an interesting concept, his horror soul.
My horror soul.
Yeah, he claims that he's been watching the Thai horror film The Eye, which I've never heard of, but it sounds insane. And that's apparently what's inspired PT, which is Playable Trailer, if you know what that is, Matt, if you remember what that is. That was weird. That was kind of like a phenomenon, right? Like, it became a thing where people were trying to get PS4s that had PT like still installed on it, and it was like they were selling for like crazy sums of money.
I think it was only available for a limited amount of time, and people were so excited to see more Silent Hill. And I guess when I say more, I mean a return to form, because there was Downpour and Silent Hill 5, and then there was a PS Vita. In fact, Downpour might have been the PS Vita, then there was Homecoming, and they all just kind of missed the mark completely on what Silent Hill is about. So I think people are really excited to actually see a Silent Hill horror game.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I'm more of a Resident Evil man. I guess Resident Evil was more of a westernized version of that, and I don't think I've played a Silent Hill to memory or even really seen it, but my knowledge of it is that it's the psychological aspect of it that gives Silent Hill that edge, and like the more poetic qualities of it. Like, isn't it Silent Hill 2 with Pyramid Head? Where he's like, that's the manifestation of the main character's guilt or something insane like that.
Silent Hill 2, I think, really paved the way for that kind of narrative in a game, where everything is suggested and inferred, and the horror comes from the character that you're playing, and how this purgatory is built specifically for him. And, there's the creeping atmosphere of dread, and then you get a tin can full of light bulbs, and you're kind of taken out of it a little bit, but,
Yeah, it's not entirely clear if Junji Ito is like being coy or it's like that, or early in the development cycle that kind of nothing concrete exists yet. Matt has actually weighed in on the news this week, as in right before we did this, and he's debunked maybe the story, not completely, but it's definitely shifted in the other direction. So for maybe people that were excited to see something like a Silent Hill, maybe about to dash your hopes, he's leaving a story that says that the Junji Ito made headlines during last week's Comic-Con for what he said about Kojima. It was more of a passing comment made at a party that I would like to work with you. So I think they're maybe just respecting each other's works, and that, if the planets aligned and we got to work with each other, that would be something they'd be up for doing.
Yeah.
It's maybe a much further thing off than we think. It's definitely not impossible, but it's gone from maybe like a 50-50 to maybe like a 90-10 situation.
I mean, if
Matt, this is another thing. Go on.
I mean, if Kojima is saying he wants to make the scariest horror game ever made, and Ito has now publicly advertised his desires, maybe this, as much as not necessarily controversial, but it's kind of gone back on itself, it could actually lead to the same result, them being more aware of each other and collaborating.
Yeah, it could be the catalyst that actually makes this happen. But Matt, this is another thing that's very current to you and quite close to your heart. You actually even shared the announcement of this on your Facebook.
I did.
If I remember right.
I did indeed.
Are you going to be keeping a close eye on this progressing situation and tell people how much you love the work of Mr. Junji Ito so far? Because I'm pretty sure you do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be keeping my eyeballs peeled on this. Like, when I saw it, I was like, hell yeah. I've heard of Junji Ito previously because I'm into Lovecraft, and I'd watched like some videos on the kind of work that he does, and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But manga's not really my thing, so I was like, it's not in my wheelhouse, so I didn't really bother checking it out. And then it was World of Horror, which I only started playing like a month and a half ago, that takes real heavy direct inspiration from Junji Ito. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to take the plunge, and I'm going to buy one of his collections. So, in fact, this is a little bit of a story, because I got Uzumaki, because I've heard it's one of the best ones, which, from my reading, it is Uzumaki. The collection of short stories, Uzumaki, that comes into like a larger narrative, is one of his better tales of terror. But I accidentally ordered a German version when I first got it.
Oh, no.
English front cover, English back cover, open it up, all in German. I was a sad man.
First page, you read, Das meinen Ghost Papa.
I did. Those words. How did you know? Were you in the room with me?
Yeah.
Yeah, since then I've read Uzumaki Gyo. I'm halfway through Tomie. I've read Shiver, his Frankenstein adaptation that came with a bunch of other additional stories as well. And there's one other. But yeah, I've been kind of hoovering up his work in lockdown. Pretty good.
I appreciate the review. So yeah, I hope that I'm going to rely on you actually to keep an eye on the story, because it's definitely more your street than mine.
Now going live to our horror journalist.
And you're just there screaming in a bottomless pit.
My horror soul! Ah!
It's been awakened. But this is now time for my big main news story, which is a little bit personal to me, because it's for me, because it's about Red Dead Redemption 2, specifically Red Dead Online. But I'm in the thick of this now, as if you'll know if you've been listening to the What You're Playing for the last couple of episodes. Red Dead Online got a fairly chunky content update on July 28th. And for a while now, Red Dead Online and by extension Rockstar has like faced criticism from players for it's been a bit buggy, it's not the most stable game, not that GTA is by any stretch of the imagination, as Matt knows firsthand.
Yes.
You know, getting between lobbies, or there's a weird thing where if, like, say if you leave the game, I don't know if everybody else has this, please confirm or deny that I might be the only one. But if I leave the game and then immediately try and go back into the game, it's like, oh, we just can't find you a lobby. And I just have to like close the game down and open up again. I can't go back into online after leaving. And that can't be right, right?
No. Just no.
Yeah. So there were various bugs in the game, particularly one that was stopping animal spawning, which basically, within the free roam environment, which kind of makes one of the specialist roles, that being the trader, where you kill animals, sell them to a guy at your camp, and then he makes supplies from that, and then you go and sell them, and then that's like how you generate money. So that was a major thing that people were getting annoyed about. There's pretty much just been a generally lack of content, especially when you also compare it to GTA, which gets big updates and has still got big updates over the last like 5 years. You know, they've never really left that game alone. And it even led to things where, like, in way of protesting, people were dressing up. You can get like not full-on clown outfits, but you can put on like stupid bank robbery mask, and people were putting on like shitty clothes and just like running around lobbies, like not doing anything, just like filling up the servers. So when it gets to the point of like apathy, I think that's when you got to start being worried, because when people don't care, at least when they get angry, that's the thing. But when they're just like, pfft.
But they're like almost actively protesting virtually, right?
Yeah, basically. Rockstar definitely took notice by doing this. So they announced in a blog post that they were going to get, quote, a massive new update for Red Dead Online that was going to be called the Naturalist, and that there was going to be a big summer update for GTA Online as well. But they didn't specify a date or any real details. They just said a big summer update. But it will apparently be the, quotes, biggest update ever for GTA Online, which is saying a lot because there have been some pretty big ones. My hard drive can attest to that. And that they will feature, quotes, heists in an entirely new location. So that might mean that they're going to open up a new old section of the map, if that makes sense. So like maybe Liberty City or Vice City, or speculate for days, but whatever, that's what they've specified. But yeah, back to the Red Dead update. It's called the Naturalist. The main selling point of it is that it's giving a new specialist role, which is where you focus on either humane animal capture or like the killing of animals and hunting, and you get 2 new NPCs that will pay you for either one. So there's one woman that will pay you for capturing animals, and one guy that will pay you for like animal skins and can make stuff like that. You also get legendary animals. There is legendary bounties for the bounty hunter role, and now they've added in this where you can get the majestic white bison, and that's obviously worth more, and you can make unique stuff with that. And they kind of go hand in hand with this new role. There are some other things, like you add more clothing, a few new guns, some other bugs have apparently been tweaked, including this animal spawning issue, which is the main, I think, gripe people had. They launched the Outlaw Pass 3, which is basically their version of a battle pass, and that's pretty much the bulk of what it is. Now, I was curious because for my own, I guess, gameplay involvement in Red Dead, I've pretty much finished with Red Dead Online because I've got the achievements I need to. I've got the rank that had the achievement, rank 50. Don't really need to do it anymore, but it piqued my interest, so I thought I'd dive back into it just to see if they had been true to their word and if the game had metamorphosized into this new thriving community. And there's this thing where you have a camp in the world, and it can like move around. You can pack up your camp set in different locations. When I went in the first time, I was like, okay, this is where my camp is, and then I went back there and my camp just moved. So it's immediately seemed that there was some bugs and stuff going around. So that wasn't a great start to what was there. So I was a little bit, I was starting to worry a little bit. I thought, right, I'll go and check out what the actual selling point of this is. I'll go and see what the Naturalist is, and check out this new role. So to quickly cover it, there were 4 roles before: Trader, Moonshiner, Collector, and Bounty Hunter. And that's just basically different styles you can play to earn money within the game. And the caveat that comes with all these is that there's always some miraculous bit of equipment you need to start doing that role. So for the Bounty Hunter, you need a license. Moonshiner, you need a shack. Collector, you need a special bag, because you can't just put stuff in a normal bag. It needs to be a very special collector's bag. And they all cost 15 gold bars, which is the in-game currency. You can't use in-game money to buy it. It has to be gold bars. And gold either has to be bought, or you can earn it through challenges, or you get a very small amount for PvP. To give a reference, Matt, for completing one challenge, you get 0.02 gold bars. So 20 gold nuggets, 100 nuggets equals 1 gold bar. So I thought maybe with this criticism coming along, they would make this new role, and it would be more of a lower barrier to entry. They want to entice people to play the game. It's kind of an apology in a way, maybe a little bit of a sorry that we haven't done as much with this game as you would have wanted. So I went to the woman. Well, you have to go through a little cutscene first, and it's like, oh, come and see me at my camp. Went to the camp, went to the woman, and I was like, oh, she's just sitting in a tent. I can just go and speak to her, and I can start kicking this off immediately. And then she says, oh, welcome to my camp. You will need this compendium and this field tracking guide. It's 25 gold bars, so 10 more than the other standard ones. And I was immediately annoyed, and I just didn't understand. To me, this just seems like one step forward and 2 steps back. Why would you make a new addition to a game that's kind of an apology to a lack of attention paid to it and a lack of content that you've been providing, pushing it as the unique selling point and the main focus of the update, and then give it a higher paywall than any other stuff that already exists? Because if you're already invested in the game, you go, oh, well, I'm not going to waste 25 bars on that. I'm just going to carry on with the stuff I've been doing. And if you're new to the game, you're like, well, I'd rather just start doing one of the other things. It just seems, I don't know, I just don't get the logic in the decision of doing that. But alas, I've spoken too much on that. If you've got any thoughts on the update, feel free to let us know, but I was personally a bit disappointed. Rockstar have promised to keep periodically listening to the community for feedback, but we'll see. So that became a bit of a story time there, as opposed to news. Big Red Dead update, let us know what you thought about it. And that is all my news.
I am enlightened as always.
You are willkommen. So that was my news. So now we move on to the episodic question, which was, should this generation of young gamers be encouraged to be streamers, YouTubers, and or influencers? And before we talk about what we think, we're going to address some of the comments that we got that were in answer to this question, which Matt, I believe, is going to read out first.
Yes, so our first answer comes from John, who first chastises you, Sam, for not mentioning Rayman when talking about platformers in the last episode, and then goes on to say, if their aim is not to make a career out of it, I still have reservations. It's a tough world, and even if simply streaming, making videos for their own enjoyment, I worry about the effects of trolls and other assholes out there who get their kicks out of hassling and borderline abusing people who put themselves out there. There's too much damage this sort of stuff can cause, which is an interesting point, and I am inclined to agree with that. You know, that people do get a lot of hate online, even if what they're doing is pure and for fun, you'll attract negative attention.
Yeah, do you know what? It's a weird one to think about that, because, you know, we've got, as anyone on the internet with anything to say, like we do, we've got a couple of negative comments about stuff, and it's surprising how much it, you know, just a random opinion or just some negative words can affect 2 fully grown men. So if you were 11, 12, 13, and someone just starts hurling loads of abuse at you, I think that's,
yeah.
I can't imagine how 12-year-old me would have dealt with something like that. So that's a very good point, I think. Next comment we've got is from Larwick, and he asks, should gamers be encouraged to be content creators? I feel like it's a fun and creative process to give it a go. They need to be prepared for disappointment, since it inevitably doesn't work out for 99% of people. Also, kids should be taught that it's okay not to be famous or wanting to chase the limelight, etc. And it doesn't make you a failure in any way if you don't succeed that. Yeah, I agree with all those points, to be honest. I think that social media has kind of, I guess, created a thing of aspiring to do that, or it makes it seem like, oh, there's this definite pathway you can get to achieve this pseudo fame, when it's people that have kind of either it's happened to first or have just got lucky. That's why everyone sells a course of how to succeed in social media. Or I can see why kids now are like sucked into that, because I'm sure if I was a kid now, I would be yearning to do the same. But yeah, I think maybe that needs to be put into I don't know, maybe education in some way. Maybe like use and not abusing social media should be in the, what was it? We called it citizenship in our school, Matt. I don't know what it was, or like PSCHE. We like learn like life values. I don't know
Nope.
if you remember that. No.
I didn't have that at Filton College. We had critical thinking, which I think was the closest thing.
Oh yeah, maybe that. I guess maybe falls under that bracket. But yeah, maybe just teaching kids a bit about that and how to cope with social media being like a normal part of life.
We've got a comment from Mr. Coffee who answers with, I feel that encouraging younger people to become more involved in other aspects of the gaming community would be preferable to encouraging them to get into streaming. Many games have active modding communities that can help develop skills and inspire creativity without the same level of public exposure that streaming creates. That is an interesting avenue of thought, because I hadn't really even considered that. Becoming a hobbyist game developer, I suppose, without the stress of working on the building blocks of a game, just jumping into modding. You know, you can make a name for yourself in modding, and modders have been taken on by development studios, Sonic Mania being an example of that. So that's a really interesting point.
Yeah, I imagine for a lot of people it can be like something of a gateway into being like, oh well, you know, if a games company's looking for a new programmer or a level designer, if you look at like the modding community is a great place to start, right? Because you just look at the people that have done that stuff.
Yeah.
Who's to say that the next person to work on the Super Mario team won't be someone who was a very good Super Mario Maker creator?
Exactly. Yeah. Mario Maker does allow you to flex your game design muscles, and you know, it's kind of like Lego for devs, I suppose.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Our final comment comes from Sheepington. She says that, I agree with what John and Larwick said. I think it's something that should be presented as a hobby, but not necessarily as a job. It's a deeply saturated market, and the video sharing platforms are so unstable right now, especially YouTube. I think it's still a good experience overall. It's fun, but it involves a lot more work than people think, especially to make successful quality content. I think that's a very good point, that, you know, it's when people say, oh, I'm making a living off YouTube. That's like the 1% of people on YouTube. But because they're the ones that everybody watches, if you're an adolescent, you'll be like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to make Minecraft videos, and you'll see it as, I guess, you're doing the exact same thing as they're doing, but they're getting millions of views and you're getting like 7 views. So I can imagine it must be pretty discouraging as a kid to think you're doing all the right stuff and not getting any of the results. So I would also agree with Sheepington. We're very agreeable people.
Yeah, I think these comments kind of echo my own thoughts on it, where pursuing content creation as an expression of a hobby, I'm okay with. I think that's a good idea. But by saying to a child, oh, you want to be a vlogger full time, definitely do that. They're not the same thing, you know. And specifically, I don't like vlogging because it encourages no other skills whatsoever besides talking inanely about your life. I think have a hobby, have an interest, be passionate. If that means that you want to express that in a community, whether it's YouTube or Twitch or anywhere else, then be expressive with it, but don't rely on it.
Yeah, that's a good standpoint. For me, it's a weird one because it's like a yes and a no. So if my child came to me and said, I want to be a Twitch streamer, or I want to start making stuff for YouTube or whatever, I think that because by the time that we're parents and our kids are of that age, because we kind of grew up and we know obviously the platform could change over the next however many years, or the paradigm of what is the next best thing, you can't really tell. But I think because we have a better handle on what the technology is and like the odds of success, whereas our parents wouldn't have a clue. If you said to your mum at like age 12, you want to be a Twitch streamer or a vlogger, not that it would have really existed at that point, but had it, you know, they wouldn't even had a clue of what, they couldn't even fathom what you were talking about, you know, it'd just be gibberish.
Yeah.
I try and be like as supportive as I could. If they're like, oh, can you, for my birthday, can you get me like a capture card or something like that? That, you know, I'd be trying to help them as much as I could, as long as it wasn't like I'm not going to school and I'm just going to stream. That's a definite no. And I wouldn't be like this new age step parent that was pushing my kids to do vlogs, or because I think, oh, well, I've watched them and I think you have as well, of like family vlogging and how that can just be really unhealthy, especially for children. So yeah, I don't think I'd ever tell my kids to aspire to be that, especially not an influencer. But I don't, because I don't think you can't plan it and you can't like bank on going viral. It's just not a thing. Those are our thoughts.
And the question for this episode is, take it away, Sam.
Is the free-to-play model the, quotes, future of gaming?
An interesting one. I'm looking forward to seeing what answers we get to that one. What people think of the free-to-play model.
So that's it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for listening, as always.
Yeah, thank you for choosing to spend your time here with us, and thanks to the comments that we got for that final question. It's always nice to have a bit of interaction. Keep your eyes peeled on Vox Ludio for more speech check, and also check out our interviews. We've got one with indie game developer, one with a burgeoning streamer, and the owner of a small business here in Cardiff centered around gaming. So if you'd like to hear what they think about the current landscape of gaming in their various professions, go ahead and check those out.
Yeah, if you like what you heard, feel free to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell and all that stuff. You know what to do. Like Matt said, check out our other content because we worked really hard on it and we'd like it if you watched it as well. But yeah, we'll hopefully by the time this is heard, the Instagram page will be up and running. The Facebook page is already up and running. So if you want to check us out on the socials and speak to us, give us ideas, give us feedback, we're all open to it. All the links will be in the description. So yeah, check it out if you want to get involved. And thanks again for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Cheerio!